Well, Pam, which way you going? Left or right?
Right.
That's too bad.
Why?
Well, because it was a 50-50 shot on whether you'd be going left or right. You see, we're both going left. You could have just as easily been going left, too, and if that was the case, it would have been a while before you started getting scared. But since you're going the other way, I'm afraid you're gonna have to start getting scared immediately.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
I just can't take no pleasure in killing nothing. Just some things you gotta do. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Who's laughing now? Be one of us. Join us! Join us! Join us! Join us! Well, we'll just wait here for a little while. See what happens.
Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to another edition of SplatterCast. I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And so we got a little interesting one for you guys here, a little bit topical, as we have been recently. You know, we just talked Tremors 2, which I do want to say thank you guys so much. That reached 100, and I think at this recording we're at 104 views.
Yeah, I think so. It's a hot topic.
It is. It's the fastest like we've ever gotten to 100. Like I know our first podcast was it's at 116 views, but that took almost a month to reach that. This was within 7 days we had 100 views. So I threw a little thing up on Twitter thanking you guys, but I want to formally thank you. That was really cool. We hope to keep growing. We definitely got a few more subscribers off of it, and it's just real motivating, real nice to see. So thank you again. I know to some it's not the biggest deal in the world, but to us it does mean a lot that people are watching. So
it's those shriekers, man. That's what does it. So we're just gonna turn this into. It's not even gonna be a Tremors podcast. It's just gonna be a Tremors 2 podcast, and we're gonna keep doing the movie over and over from like different perspectives.
Yeah, just keep riding the high of that, and just beat the horse until it's completely dead.
There we go, until there's nothing left.
And a little shout out to a guy on Twitter, Tremors Saga. He was definitely, I think, pretty instrumental in that climbing so quickly.
So he's great.
Yeah, he literally retweeted every article you put up. Every time we pimped out the video, he was on top of it. So, thank you, man. We really appreciate it.
Did you listen to the podcast that he has?
I actually listened to a piece of it. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. So
I thought it was great, and he covers the screenplay, the original screenplay. And I was like, I'm listening to it and I was like, damn it, I didn't even have to read this. I could have just listened to this dude go through the entire screenplay. It was like missed opportunities. He does such a great job too.
And you learn. Yeah, no, definitely. I listened to some of it. I do want to go back and finish it up. I have a real problem with ADHD with my podcasts recently. I got so many between the Losers Club, Halloweenies. I listen to Psychoanalysis now, Horror Virgin, all these guys. I'm just going around like crazy. Another guy that you had some interaction with on Twitter, Hack the Movies, actually.
Oh,
yeah. I've been watching his stuff for about 6 months now. I stumbled across him.
They were covering Tremors, I think.
They were, yeah. So we got wrapped up in that. So those are cool guys. Honestly, love to have any of those guys on the show. Tremor Saga, Hack the Movies, any of those guys. If you guys ever want to get on, talk. Oh, absolutely, yes. But any of you guys ever want to collaborate on something, let us know, because we definitely love your guys' opinions. Especially if we get Tremor Saga when we cover another Tremors movie. I think that would be very beneficial to get his opinion, because he is in the know. as they say.
And like, like I think in the last one, I was like, I'm not interested in covering any other Tremor stuff other than the original and the sequel. We could always do the very last one just to be like, hey, this is where the series is at right now. I'm assuming they're going to come out with another one, but they're
I
like,
think like, and not to get on the soapbox of Tremors for too long, but I think that like the later sequels aren't as bad as you'd think, like the ones with Jamie Kennedy and stuff. Like they're enjoyable. Like I mean, you still get Burt Gummer, you still get all this stuff, and I mean, you're watching these big worms eat people, but you just got to realize that it's never going to reach that the former glory that you had with Tremors 1 and 2.
yeah. And then, well, and I think Sean S. Wilson, didn't he direct 4?
I think so. Yeah, I just don't remember 4 that well. I will have to go back and check it out.
Yeah.
So the jury's out on how I really feel about that one. But and I mean, same with 3. It's been a long time. I remember more about like 5, 6, and I think 7. Aren't they up to 8? Are they up to 8, or is it 7 or
I
8?
don't know.
Either way, I've seen those ones a lot more than I've seen 3 and 4.
Well,
Surprisingly.
because I think there was a long layover, wasn't there, from 3 to 4?
I believe so, and then even a longer one between 4 and 5.
Yeah,
Because
so
5 was like within the last, like I want to say 6 years.
yeah, and I think that kind of came with the big horror boom where it's like, oh, we can capitalize off of the, not like take advantage, but like, oh, there's a market out here for this, so let's start pumping out Tremors movies because there's a market for it. People love Tremors,
Oh
obviously.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like we found that out pretty hard. I mean, like people seem to really respond to the graboids, which is just surprising to me. That's like, we're just a little show ourselves right here. Like we don't even have like a big following at all. So it's kind of like the reaction we got from that. It just makes me wonder, like, why is this franchise still like dormant as far as like big screen adaptation?
Yeah,
Like this feels like something that I don't know if the studios know that if they jump on this, like there could be a pretty big resurgence for it, especially get the right people involved. Maybe bring back Kevin Bacon, maybe bring back Reba McEntire.
well,
Everybody else is still kicking, other than unfortunately Fred Ward. So
I think maybe because there is no question. I feel in the regard of practical effects, maybe it's slightly intimidating for a studio because I know wasn't that the issue with when they did the pilot? It never really got picked up. I've heard that it was a good pilot, but then they were like, well, it's probably going to be too expensive, so we're not really going to give this a full go of it. So it's like maybe that is the reason. And where I mean, yeah, Tremors is a big deal in the horror community, but maybe they're just like is a general audience there. I don't know. Because I feel like if they do one, it's going to be retconned in terms of okay, we're gonna go after the original and a direct sequel to that one.
yeah, I mean, either way, I think that more Tremors content is definitely always welcome. I will be here to check it out. And especially if we could do something a little different than what we've been seeing recently. Like I said, maybe they revisit the TV show idea, maybe after a few years have passed, maybe one of these budding streaming services that are just like popping up now, like maybe a Peacock or somebody could pick it up and
Yeah.
run
Hey,
with it.
put Kevin Bacon in anything, I'll watch it. He's in a
There you
new
go.
movie coming out, I think.
I know, isn't it's the what do they call that?
It's the pronouns.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
it's something.
Is it
Uh,
they them? I can't remember.
oh no, it's they them, but it's they, and you're supposed to say the slash because they slash them.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. I never looked
Uh,
into it. Now I like it. Well, I was intrigued and I meant to actually because I don't know if there's a trailer out there or
no
as far.
trailer yet, but there were
Okay,
some
because
images that came out a little
I
while
was
ago.
thinking about putting that in. I think for weeks ago or for the Sunday Scaries, and I never committed to it. But
Yeah,
we'll have to talk about that one.
absolutely. They it's the concept is really neat too. It seems like it'd be a juicy role for Kevin Bacon, where because I love when he plays a bad guy.
Yeah,
And like
Hollow Man.
so yeah, Hollow Man, X-Men First Class, like yeah, he's done it a few
Hollow
times.
Man.
Yeah, Hollow Man, yes, is that the only one you know?
Yeah.
Okay. But like this is really cool because he's like the concept is he's the leader of a conversion camp.
No, but oh man, this is wild
Yes.
already.
Yeah, so he's heading up a conversion camp that people start getting murdered at.
Oh, I'm
So
intrigued.
yeah, no, it
Oh,
it it sounds really good. So like I'm curious. It's kind of like I think it's A24 or Neon or one of those companies too
okay.
that's
Either
doing it.
way,
Yeah,
I'm on board.
it could be a smaller one, but I'm pretty sure I know it's a smaller company that's behind it.
Uh,
But yeah,
we're gonna have to cover that one,
yeah,
100%.
no. I mean, once we definitely will get there for sure because there's going to be a lot to say with that. Yeah, I mean, A24 as far as horrors coming up, they got some interesting projects. Like I'm interested in that Bodies movie.
Oh yeah.
It just looks really weird. So I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out. And then the only other thing I want to mention before we get into our discussion here,
This is a
um,
pre-discussion discussion.
yeah, I mean, come on, you know it's us. We're gonna do this. We're gonna run shit too long. We're gonna talk about whatever we feel like talking about. It's our show, damn it. Let us do it. Um, but we're gonna talk about Pearl. I have really been like deep diving on X, which is
Yeah.
something we're definitely going to talk about. We kind of just missed it when we started up the podcast. Like the wave had kind of subsided
Yeah,
by
we were
then.
gonna
So
try to do a little review on it, but we never got it. We were just picking things back up, so that didn't make it into the schedule.
so we'll definitely be covering it on the show at some point. But like I actually heard like I gotta say this is from the Dead Meat podcast. Do you watch them on YouTube
I've
sometimes?
seen some stuff. I don't watch them regularly.
Yeah, I mean he does Kill Count. It's James A. Janice and his wife. They do a podcast together where they just go in depth on movies and like their take on X. I feel like I because I've only seen the movie like twice now, but like I feel like the second viewing I got more out of it, but they really like cracked that entire movie open for me. So I totally understand what this is. Like there's some things that I guess didn't notice
Oh, okay.
and wasn't caught up in.
I'll
We'll
have
have to
to
talk
listen to
about
it
it
because
off
I've seen it
air.
twice now too.
Yeah, it's I like it even more
Yeah,
and it
it's
makes
great
me so
filmmaking.
excited. So
And our first viewing of that, I didn't know. I can't remember if you knew. I think you did. There
no.
was gonna. Oh,
Well,
you
okay,
didn't. Okay.
I knew there was gonna be another. I knew that it's supposed to be a trilogy. I didn't
Yeah.
know about that trailer though.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
And this one falls what in the middle of where all the stories are going to be told, or something like
Yes.
that.
So this
Um,
is the mid story. We're getting one that takes place in 1918. And then we're getting one with picking back up with Mia Goth's character.
and I really do like that because obviously the equation goes 1, 2, and 3, where this one we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of just opening with 2 to get you
2, 1,
asking all
3.
those questions, and it's like after the movie, there's so many questions they could have dove into this or dove into that, and they didn't, and then it's like, oh wait, no, this is the middle piece. So it's like I'm very intrigued to see where everything else is going because clearly he has a vision for it.
Oh yeah. But without further ado, I think we should just get in here. We've almost talked like, 12, 13 minutes here of just, you know, stuff going on, but little tremors, little X, we'll get there. But let's get right into it. Today's topic, we're discussing my pick this week, Sinister, which is Scott Derrickson's. This is his third film, but for like second big studio film.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is definitely a movie that was kind of interesting because I remember watching this. I think I rented it from Redbox back in the day with my dad. I wasn't huge on this movie at the time. I just was like, but I honestly, like, it's weird for me to say this, but like, I really didn't care for paranormal stuff when it came to horror movies. It just wasn't my genre of horror. I was much more the slasher creature feature. I liked my gore. I liked my, stuff. And ghosts just were something that didn't scare me. So,
Yeah.
it's something like that. And I got to say, I think like a part of that comes from the paranormal activity movies being so big for the age that I was, that's kind of what I grew accustomed to being a lot of supernatural horror. So like, all this stuff like Rosemary's Baby and all these other movies like The Shining and everything, like the kind of paranormal stuff really just didn't drag me in. It wasn't till like years down the line here that I've gotten more and more into it. And I would say within the last 2 or 3 years, I've really seen some stuff that's kind of turning me around on that, especially in writing. Like some of these scripts and ideas we've been talking about off air that we're working on, like I've really come around to the whole paranormal angle
Yeah.
a lot more. There's a lot of freedom in that.
And like I'm on that same page with you where I honestly I feel like uh you can really pick out like the mid 2000s kind of paranormal stuff. And it went pretty long winded in the sense where it's like, yeah, paranormal activity is it feels like the time, I guess. There's a lot of stuff that came out around that time that was just paranormal, and it feels that way. Like, the Sixth Sense, I feel like is still it has a different feel, even though it's paranormal. Where it's like you get in that mid 2000 stuff, and it kind of has this almost generic feeling to it. And like you're saying, I feel like we are coming out of that. What it's A24 is doing, or those smaller studios maybe taking chances and adding a little bit more lore to a lot of the paranormal stuff, and kind of giving it its own edge. Like how you say, like Rosemary's Baby has a very different feeling to it as opposed to, this stuff like Paranormal Activity. What is that? The Possession or something like that came out around this, like that end of the, I guess probably around the time Sinister came out.
Yeah, so you're talking about, I actually watched a couple of old reviews that came out around that time, specifically Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman's reviews. And
Yeah.
they're talking about, so at the time that this movie comes out, you got to think where we were in the grand scheme of horror here. So we had House at the End of the Street. You remember that one with Jennifer Lawrence?
So I've watched some of that one. Again, like what you're saying.
Oh, I never watched it. I'm just saying, do you remember it? Like, because that
Oh
thing was
yeah. Well, yeah, I
advertised
remember it.
everywhere.
These are films I checked out on. So it's like, yeah, I remember it, and it falls right in line with that. But it was something like, again, I was where you're at, where I was aware of it, but I never watched it.
Yeah, and then we have The Possession was right around that time. The one with the antique box.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like, and it's just like stuff like that just, that was the landscape that we were dealing with at this time. So, I kind of saw Sinister. I mean, I'll even say like the advertising for this movie, once we kind of get through our, next intro here and I put up all the graphics, it just doesn't do this movie justice, I feel. It bills it like a Possession or a House at the End of the Street or, stuff like that kind of movie of that tone and that time and that era. And like, this movie is so not that. And it was so refreshing, honestly, like to come back and watch this after all these years and not really remembering much about it. I knew that it had some regard, some respect amongst the horror community, but I think I kind of wrote that off as just a lot of like, and I don't mean to sound like a prude or pretentious in any way when I mean this, but like, just kind of like, this is like a horror movie for people who just like basic horror. Like, you're not going to catch these people, watching like Reanimator and stuff like that and going back even further to see like things like From Beyond or, even shit we've already covered, like Abominable and stuff like that. Like, they're not going to go and deep dive and watch stuff like that. Or, they're not going to appreciate things like, they'll appreciate things like The Shining, but just because of its reputation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it just has that pre-existing reputation and they're just going to ride off that. So like, when The Black Phone, which really motivated my rewatch of this, was about to come out, it was that week that it had come out that I had watched this. I just threw it on and I got so caught up in it and just like really blown away by just the characters, the story, where it was going. And I just felt like I was watching a totally different movie than what I remembered, because I only remembered fragments of this. And, like, that was my sole motivation for wanting to put this on as my next pick. Cause like, I think when we do our picks, we kind of always jostle around a couple that we say, it might be this, it might be that. But like I watched that and then I was pretty certain. I think right after we watched The Black Phone, I was like, yeah, we're doing Sinister. Because, you know, it's Derrickson, and I mean, like if you're keeping up with the channel, you'll know that we're avid fans of The Black Phone here. Luke has seen the movie 3 times in theaters.
Oh,
so, you know, like this was just, I felt like a nice natural step for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like I'll say out of the group of films we've done recently and from when we when we started the podcast for the very first time, where it's just the audio stuff. This film, it feels very different than a lot of the other ones that we've covered.
I believe it's the most modern movie we've covered.
Yeah, I think it is. So when you had initially said this is what we were gonna do, I was like, because I haven't seen it honestly, I haven't seen it in years. The very first time that I saw this film was when I had started working at a used media store that we both eventually worked at.
It's where we met.
Of course, and now look at us doing a podcast. So I had seen this. This was, I don't want to say it was one of my very first voodoo codes, but it was like in that, you know, within the first probably 3 or 4 months of me getting the job. So it was one that I had seen not in theaters. You know, I never owned the Blu-ray. it was a code I picked up and I entered into my Vudu account to watch it at some other point. So at that time, I would just watch, you know, digestible horror, where it was like, oh, it's a new horror movie, let me put it on at night and I'll just watch it. And that's where Sinister fell in. And it's like, I have seen The Possession, you know, so it was like all that stuff was coming out at the same time. So I kind of was watching them one after another. But like this film, and we'll dive more into it here, there is a little more gravitas. There's more story. I think there's more care here. But I feel like for a lot of people, if you haven't seen it, because there are probably a lot of people that may not have revisited Sinister. I was one of them until just recently, where it kind of just might get grouped into that kind of not so great filmmaking at that time of the supernatural. So it's like it can go very much overlooked, especially if like someone decides to watch Sinister 2, because that one always seems to be streaming on Netflix. So it's like if we go into Sinister 2, now that one feels like in line with The Possession, or, you know, House at the End of the Street, all that type of stuff. So like Sinister is very much that that outlier, I guess, and it kind of might get overlooked by a general audience.
Yeah, I mean, like, it happened with me, so I think that it can happen with more people. If you were one of those people, then I hope by the end of this podcast, you know, you're turned around and you might throw it back on, because I would say that it very much whipped my opinion around like 180. Like, I've gone a completely different direction now after watching this recently.
Because, like, thinking back on this one, the love for The Black Phone was, for me, it was like, you know, I really, really enjoyed that film. And then kind of thinking about Sinister before I watched it was like, I don't know if that's really in line. You know how sometimes directors have those, they have a really great film and then the rest of their body of work is just like so. And I was like, I don't know how Sinister is going to hold up to what I had just seen of The Black Phone. Now, do I think it's as good as The Black Phone? No. But
I would even agree with you there. I don't think so.
What'd you say?
I said I would agree with you there. I don't think it's as good as The Black Phone. The Black Phone, just to get it out up front, I think it's Scott Derrickson's best movie right now.
And I'm with you right there. So it's like, but you can definitely see the framework here, where it's like, oh, there's a lot of glimmers of very smart filmmaking. We'll dive into it because there's a lot of great stuff here.
Absolutely. So without further ado, we'll get into our first segment here, which, you know, we so graciously titled The Account of the Macabre.
The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young, but had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history. the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, so this is where we basically go through the synopsis of the said film. We kind of give you our bullet points of just what happens in this movie. So, without further ado, since I'm leading this off, I'm going to just read a basic synopsis. I have a really hard time when it comes to a segment like this, because even for this one, I am sitting there and I'm recounting the movie, and I just catch myself basically writing a story treatment, just going over every single individual point. And I just got to the point where I'm like, you know what, dude, fuck it. I'm just going to read what's on IMDb, because that's just going to sum it up way better.
It's going to sum it up perfectly.
Because like I am too long-winded with this shit. But yeah, so just for that, and then we'll talk about the movie as we go through here. Washed-up crime writer Ellison Oswald finds a box of Super 8 home movies in his new home, revealing that the murders he is currently researching is a work of a serial killer whose legacy dates back to the 1960s. That's what IMDb has for you, which I read earlier. I thought kept it pretty vague, kept it the way that I'd like to, because, I think if you've never seen this movie before, you should probably stop watching this now and watch it. If you're revisiting it, I think that you're perfectly fine here, because this will probably motivate you to watch it. But the less you know about this, I feel the better. I feel like you'll have a lot like more of a enriched experience, and I feel that way with most any movie. Like if I had it my way, like there'd be certain filmmakers, certain projects where I wouldn't even need a trailer. Like Halloween Ends, that's a perfect one. I don't even need a trailer at this point. We are so close to that movie coming out that it's like everybody's up in arms about no trailer. I'm like, fuck it, dude. Who needs it? Like, yeah, it's already sold. Like, I'm gonna go see it. I already know what to expect. I'd rather just not see anything at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much hopes for it. So even a trailer, you know what I mean? It's not really going to sell me.
I'm right there
Michael's
with you.
going to sell me, and I'm just going to go regardless of quality. But anyway, go ahead.
There you go. Like, I'm right there with you on that, but like at the same time, I'm just like, yeah, it's just kind of like it's like that. A more positive thing, like Robert Eggers. Anytime that guy produces something, I don't even need to see a trailer. Just tell me where the movie is. I'll buy a ticket. Like, I don't even want to know the concept. I just want to go in blind and just understand that he's going to have something pretty amazing. But getting back to Sinister here, what a interesting, and I say like almost ahead of its time a little bit, or I guess just on the cusp of what's going on, like kind of nowadays when it comes to this true crime, and just how much like all this has kind of popped off, whether it's Netflix documentaries, podcasts, and everything. Like to follow a guy who writes true crime novels as he's uncovering this supernatural string of murders is just such a great concept and really original. And like that in a nutshell is what's going on here. Like the story is basically Ethan Hawke's character, Ellis Oswald, moves his family into a home where these horrific murders happened. You see it right at the opening of the film with this Super 8 film, which we're going to talk about those as we go along here. But what a wonderful presentation, like really sets the mood and atmosphere, and really makes these incidents that you see, especially this opening one, where it's this family being hung on a tree branch, really effective. I'd say that it's one of the most unsettling openings I think I've ever seen to a movie.
No, it's very jarring, especially I think honestly, doesn't it just it's like the cold open really, isn't it? Where we just open up with
we don't
that,
see anything else before we see that.
and it's like you're not really prepared for what you're seeing. It gives you chills, at least from my perspective, every time you watch it. I've watched it 3 times in preparation for this podcast, and
Feels
each
real.
time
It feels like something you'd see in a documentary.
and that's where it's like all the films. What are there, 5 of them? I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
All of them. This is where I always remember this movie as being so terrifying to me. Is the Super 8 footage of this film jumps out at me so much because they're so meaningful and they're kind of cut. So they show not a lot, but just enough to let your imagination run wild. So it's like that is probably what I remember most of Sinister before I had given these rewatches, because they make them so meaningful. And that opening is probably one of the most memorable, not just in horror but in filmmaking, because you know, just to think of someone who could come up with that is so jarring. But like you're saying, where um you're talking about the synopsis, where I don't know necessarily if a paragraph or anything like that can really do the concept of this film justice. And I really wish
You
I would have
can.
went back and watched the trailers for this, because I think that's what an audience needs to be able to be sold on this, is the visuals. Because it's like, just reading that IMDb synopsis sounds pretty basic. Doesn't sound like anything out of the ordinary, but this is a way different film than what you'd be used to. So you really need that kind of visual perspective to kind of really sell you on this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I mean, like, I did watch one of the trailers for this, and it does play like a trailer from 2012 when it comes to that. It is very much reliant on the jump scare aspects and things like that. It really doesn't even play up at all any of the real family drama or anything that you get in this, which I think really bolsters this movie. And like, it's just doing its job. It's just supposed to sell it to a mass audience and everything, and it did, because I mean, the movie was made for, I believe, $3 million, and it made a killing at the box office. I mean, for as good as it can get. But it's a Jason Blum production, so he's going to put a little in and a lot out when it comes to these production. The biggest thing is that they get, most of the creatives get creative freedom to do what they want, which is
And
the
that
enticing part about working with horror and Jason Blum, I would say.
and I mean, that track record wasn't really there. I mean, not where it
Not
is right
yet,
today.
no. It was very much on the up and up, but it was still like many levels down from where it is today. Because yeah, Jason
Yeah.
Blum is a household name at this point. But yeah, I mean, like, getting back to it, like, they open with this. You follow Ethan Hawke and his family as they're moving into the home where that hanging happened, just in the backyard. And I love the opening. I think that it's a really strong opening where you just get to introduce all of our characters. You get to see the dynamics, but really where I think that it kicks off and it gets really good is in the little, do you want to call it a confrontation, or more just a not so welcome to the neighborhood from Fred Thompson as the sheriff. I think that conversation and that dynamic that they have throughout the movie is one of the best parts. I
Yes.
think that they play off of each other really well. You can just see it's two actors that are really invested in the material.
Yeah.
Because the beef between the sheriff and Ellison is that basically Ellison had written a book. They said 10 years prior to this movie.
Yep.
They're called Kentucky Blood. Yep. And basically it he solved the case. His book came out and he was able to help solve the case, and actually bring some resolution to that. And it was very popular. A lot of people were watching it. He's just known for kind of I guess not necessarily bashing, but it makes, whenever he does stuff like that, it makes the local police departments and things like that, the people who are investigating the case, look bad and come off bad, because they weren't able to do what he was able to do.
Yeah.
And so there's that drama. There's like kind of that drama and kind of that tension between the sheriff and Ellison, because basically he just knows that wherever Ellison goes, usually some kind of drama or mix up is going to get kicked up, and he's going to make it hard for his department and his people. And it's just like, I think they have a great dynamic. And then obviously we get our first little I guess hint of Officer So and So, played by James Ranson, masterfully, I must say. Like, I know when he was cast in It Chapter 2, everybody was really like, "Oh my God, James Ranson." I'm just like, I don't really know where he's from or anything, but he was good in that. He was a bright spot for me in that, but he's really good in this.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, Luke, how do you feel about these opening dynamics we have here? You got any opinions or thoughts on that?
So this is honestly one of my favorite parts here, because I want to rewind a little bit here. I don't think in recent memory I can't think of an opening that does so much for character development in such a short period of time. Where we have Ellison, with his box and he's walking in.
It's a oneer too. That's a
Yes.
one shot take. I do appreciate that.
And he's walking in, he has his little dialogue with his son, just very, very brief. So, that playful dynamic a father and son have. As he's moving through the house, he stops in his daughter's room, and we're introduced to, her painting, which is going to play a role later on. And he says, why don't you come help move boxes? And then we're introduced to the whole idea of, well, I didn't want to move, so I shouldn't have to move boxes. And I love that what they're doing here is, we're not being introduced to a family that's absolutely happy-go-lucky. Everything's great here. There's obviously some tension, and he's talking with his daughter about, okay, well, if you don't like it, then we'll move back, but you have to promise that you're going to try. And, as he comes back out with his daughter, then that's when we're introduced to the whole, the sheriff and everything. And we're introduced to that dynamic of, they already don't want him there. And at that point, we don't know exactly that dynamic until they bring up Kentucky Blood and all the other books that he's written, and the sheriff drops the, well, your bad take ruins someone's life because someone he let, his I guess crackpot theory in a sense kind of let someone go that was probably guilty.
And they don't specify which of the books it
Yeah.
was, but it was not Kentucky Blood, but it was one of the follow-ups screwed over the case.
And I think at that point we're you start thinking of like, as a creative, your project is you're only as noteworthy as your last project. So it's like, yeah, 10 years ago he had a hit, and now he's been trying to do that follow-up, that other big book. And you can understand that he's trying to grasp at straws here. When you're trying to do true crime, you can't pull out fiction. You have to kind of base it on the facts, but he's going to try and stretch that truth a little bit. And I love that dynamic of the sheriff already doesn't want him there. And you're talking about James Ranson. It's like, I love the idea of the sheriff pulling up, and he gets out, and James Ranson has the Kentucky Blood book, and he goes, "Are you serious?" And it's like, all these little nooks and crannies. We're already developing so much of the characters. We know the dynamic of the deputy and Ellison. We know the dynamic of the sheriff and Ellison. We know the dynamic of Ellison and his daughter. And then we're introduced to the wife, and she says, be nice. She doesn't want all that tension. So it's like you already know what this family has sustained in terms of his choice of career and what he's trying to do. So it's like there's already the sense of high tension, and we're kind of going in on guard, and it's all done probably within the first 5 minutes of this film. And I think that's great writing. And again, like you were talking about that one shot, it's great filmmaking in general. It really sells you on this. If that opening scene didn't get you asking questions to begin with, this scene will.
Yeah, and I think that it really, all in all, just brings you into the movie perfectly. You really, like you said, get introduced to the family so quickly. You really start to see the bonds and the dynamics. It does put into perspective that tension. I think that it also opens up the door to that drama between the husband and the wife, where you can tell that, she makes it pretty clear as we go on here that this is the last time, this is his last chance as far as pursuing this kind of career, these kind of books, because if he does this again, her and the kids are gone, because they just can't put up with it because of just the scrutiny and everything that they get. Like, she says she can't even go to the grocery store without getting dirty looks whenever they move to a town and people find out what they're there for. And I think one of the best lines in the movie that really affected me on my rewatch the first time around on this was when she says, "Don't tell me that we moved down the street from the house where it happened again." He's like, no, we didn't move down the street. But he neglects to tell her that they moved into the house where it happens. And I just think, like, what a fantastic hook. Like, that really sells it to all of you. Not only do you see, because the thing is, they establish that you want to like Ethan Hawke, and then they put that piece of information in front of you. And now you're kind of seeing like, well, Ethan Hawke's kind of a shitty guy for not informing his family of what's going on here and not making his intentions clear. Um, but you also understand where he's coming from. At least I do, and I feel like you do to a degree, as coming from a creative standpoint. Like, he wants to chase that dragon and get there and reach that point where he's able to produce great content again and something that people will enjoy. So he's desperate, and he's unfortunately dragging his family in with him into the fire, and that's kind of the whole crux of this movie, really, is that Ethan Hawke, we'll get into it a little later, he makes the right decision after a while,
Yes.
but it's one of those
Too
things
late.
where it's already too late. Like
And
from the opening scene here, it's already too late.
and that's what I like when we're talking about these dynamics. And we're introduced to the family dynamic, but also the dynamic inside of Ethan Hawke's character himself, where yes, he is this creative, and that's why me and you have talked a few days ago about a couple things that original properties that we talk about. But and I said, I have an affection for any character that's a writer, and because it's relatable, and that's where this whole scenario of yes, he's a creative, he wants to excel, like that one of the lines for me is when he says, if we were going to stay at the old house, I'd have to write textbooks, and I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And why not? I just can't. And it's like, you want to pursue what you want to pursue. You can't just be stuck in in a small room and make do with what you have. He wants to go out and achieve what he once had 10 years ago, because
Mm-hmm.
that's his ideal. And like, where yeah, what Ellison did was kind of shitty in terms of moving his family into the house where this murder occurred. But he was a person that didn't really believe in the supernatural. So it's like, I don't think he could have even guessed of what was going to happen. But as a family man, I think you see that love that he has. He really is trying to balance this, the career of being a creative author, as well as uh being a family man. And like, where there's clearly financial issues, they have that scene, I think later that night, where they're eating the Chinese food, and they said, "Well, that's gonna be the last meal like this that we have for a while, because we haven't sold the old house, and it's gonna be stretched a little thin." So it's like you can see it, and even in that scene, you kind of where the son asks about what exactly occurred, and
Mm-hmm.
um, the mother says, you don't want him walking in, because I don't know if he's like 12 or whatever, and he goes, he knows how old I am, and then he kind of Ethan Hawke's character defends the mother, like, hey, cut it out. And it's like, you can see that family dynamic of, he's not just an obsessed writer. He's trying, he goes into his office, he becomes obsessed. And then as soon as he walks out, he's a family man at the beginning. And then it kind of gets muddled more and more as he's watching these movies. And then, like you said, by the end of it, he realizes the danger that is ahead, but by then it's too late. But I love this kind of dynamic, and it's kind of like, you see it in The Shining. A lot of these things with writers, where it's like, that creative block, it turns into something so psychological that it kind of bleeds over into everything else. And I think the screenplay here really shows that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that is such a huge part of it. Like, the creative block is almost this toxic entity that attaches itself to you and can really suck into multiple facets of your life. I mean, like, we've written a handful of scripts together. That's our goal, our end game here is to, at least get a couple of these things made into feature films, or at least put on some streaming services and some shows put up, by the end of our days here. So, like, we've been there. We've been there a lot. It's a consistent problem. I mean, like, where, you'll get a lot of ideas one day and you'll just keep going and going. And then you'll hit a block. But could you imagine being a true crime author and hitting a block to where it's like, you have to be factual. You have to go off the
Yep.
evidence that you have. Like, good Lord, that must be like having this massive succubus or tumor that just exfoliates out your back and brain, and it's just like, oh God, you can't get rid of it.
Because it's not like you go to bed with writer's block, you have a dream, and you wake up the next morning and everything's clear, and you knock out 20 pages. This is like, if you can't find a crack in that case, again, going back to the sheriff's telling Ellison that, his bad take kind of let someone out, where it's like, hey, you do a bad take and present wrong evidence like that, we already know the stakes.
Oh yeah.
So it's like he has to come to terms with that. So it's like these kind of the movies that he finds in the attic are like kind of his research and kind of his I feel like his saving grace to kind of be like, okay, this is my big break. This is what the police were not able to find. I have this footage. I have this evidence. And I have to find something in here. So he becomes a little bit obsessed. And we kind of see that crucial decision where he sees that first film and he's on the phone with the police. And then I love it where he walks over to Kentucky Blood and they ask him what the problem is, and then he just hangs up because at that point he makes his decision. That crucial moment. And I just love the way that it's played out.
Yeah, no, I was just about to get into that here, where we want to talk a little bit about these tapes. And that's just such an effective start to that, was where he finds that first tape, which is the tape we see at the beginning of the movie with the family hanging. And, like that's definitely, I would say, and I'll pose a question to you here briefly in just a second, but, there's a reason they show it right off the top. It is to unsettle you, and it is to kind of show you what you're getting into. But the reincorporation of it is still just as effective because it doesn't focus as much on the tape this time as much as it focuses on Ethan Hawke's reactions.
Yeah.
And a little fun fact for you is that Ethan Hawke had not seen any of these tapes before shooting. So when he's watching this, a lot of these reactions you're seeing are genuine. So it's like, these are of the first few takes that they took of it. So, him seeing some of this stuff is genuine disgust and fear. And I mean, he's Ethan Hawke, so it's like he's going to portray that wonderfully. Yeah. But yeah, that decision that he makes when he hangs up the phone, I love it because it just shows, how deep he's willing to go and just how sick and committed he is to wanting to be this hero, get his 15 minutes of fame. I mean, I think wasn't it before this, or was it after this, that he was watching the tapes of his interviews with Kentucky Blood and stuff like that, and just reliving the glory days and stuff like that. Like, it's that real egotistical, toxic part that he just can't seem to shake of himself, because I genuinely believe that he loves his children, he loves his wife, but he has that kind of, and I was listening to an interview between Scott Derrickson and Cargill, his co-writer. I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting his first name all of a sudden.
Robert?
Is it Robert? Robert C. Cargill or whatever? Oh, C. Robert Cargill. That's what it is. Yeah. So forgive me. But they had kind of discussed it as their greatest fear. And that's how they wanted to portray Ellison Oswald's character, because it's always their fear that, they'll get so invested or they'll get so sucked into a project that it'll take away and it'll detach them from their family. And, I can personally relate to that as a huge fear to me, especially with being a new father here and everything. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I always think about the kind of art and the kind of thing that I want to do. And it does bring a lot of fear as to, well, am I going to invest so much of myself into these projects, into these stories, that, I'm going to lose parts of, my family and just parts of my, like life moments and things like that. Is it going to be a trade-off like that? And it was really interesting to hear them say that, and then have them have things like Doctor Strange and now the Black Phone and stuff. And they're showing that you can do it. It's hard work, but you can do it. And it's just even more interesting, and I think adds even more layers to knowing that the embodiment of Ellison Oswald is the writer and director's greatest fear. Like it is
Well,
that
see,
that person they're afraid to become.
and I feel like, um, we have a strong affection for these kind of writers being creatives, and I think that's pretty much anyone who cast these kinds of characters in any of these films, where everyone's going to have the strong attachment because a creative is creating another creative. Um, and the scene you were talking about, where he is watching himself on the late night talk show 10 years earlier, and they ask him, what's greater, the sense of justice that you've gotten from your book, or the money and being on the #1 bestseller list. And he says the justice, no question about it. And if I ever write a book for money, I'd rather cut off my hands, and that's where it's like he's watching this interview. I think it's after he's already made that decision, because the look of disgust on his face, the self-awareness that he has, tells you everything on how he feels about his decision. But again, I feel like he is such at that point he's become a means justifies the end type of guy, because I think I've read the screenplay for this, and it plays mostly like how the movie comes out. But I think there are a few lines in the screenplay that are not in the film, more so about they are very stretched, they have nothing left. How I think he mentions that the payments on the house that they live in now are embarrassing monthly because of how low they are, and it's really the only thing that they can afford at this time because they have no money. So it's like, I think he's self-aware of the decision that he makes, but he honestly has no way out of this because he's invested so much in his creative career that there is nothing out there. But again, we do have to realize that I don't know what he could have made, but he does mention that he could have written textbooks, but he did not
Yeah,
want to. So it's like one of those, he's disgusted by his decision because there's no way out of it, but he worked himself into that decision.
I always think about that too. Like, if it always comes down to, you know, what if I am faced with that? You know what I mean? What if I'm ever put in a position where it's like, I have to, I'm choosing money between going to my family or going to this project. And, it's a great fear. Like, I mean, obviously, I want to say with 100% certainty, I would obviously choose my family. But, and I think a part of that, like why that fear is so stoked in a lot of creatives, and you see it played so well here by Ethan Hawke and this character, is because I think that a lot of it has to do with just how, like, there's a lot of built up expectations in society for creatives as being these, almost succubuses, where, like they need so much to produce what they produce, but they literally, like, it's a 1 in a million shot that it's even gonna go anywhere, or that it's gonna reproduce or bring back any wealth. So it's almost a very selfish kind of
Yeah.
endeavor. And that's a lot of guilt to live with. And that could just be my imposter syndrome talking, but I think that that's a big part of this character, and a big part of characters that we write like this, is that he's self-aware of just how selfish he's being.
Yeah.
And like, that is so admirable to just see that on screen portrayed so realistically. And it's just like one of those things where it's like watching this stuff, and I mean, like, we're not even into the horror yet, really, other than the tapes, which are unsettling in and of themselves. But this stuff really, I think, hits me on a deeper level, because it is just that whole, I can relate to that,
Yes. And
that fear.
I think that's what makes this film so great. Like you're talking about, we'll get into horror and stuff like that, but like for me, it's almost secondary. I don't know, like some of it plays well, some of it doesn't for me. But like the story in itself of Ellison Oswalt and the Oswalt family, it plays so well for me, because like one of the things that we're talking about is like, that imposter syndrome, and uh not feeling like you're up to par, and the creative I guess career is sometimes a selfish career depending on how you look at it. Whereas like I think you can look at it in two different ways, where it's a burden to be almost an unproven creative in terms of you haven't sold anything. But it's also kind of freeing in a sense where, hey, you can write a screenplay about a werewolf, and I'm unproven right now. Once I get proven, I can show this to someone, or a vampire or anything like that. It's almost freeing in that sense. Whereas you look at Ellison Oswald, he's a proven commodity in the true crime realm. So it's
Their
like, again,
expectations.
it's a burden to him because he already had that hit. He's got to come up with another one. And no matter what anyone says, everyone can be like, hey, I just need one hit and I'm golden. As a creative, you're going to be almost hungry for that next hit. And that's what he is. Yes, the financial aspect is a motivation for him, but I also feel like, hey, when he mentions, I'm on to something big here, it's not like all the money you can imagine. He makes certain that he says the talk show circuit. It's like I think a little bit of him wants that fame again, to be that number one bestseller.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think just to so we can kind of wrap up our section here, because we've gone a bit long on this one,
It's a
and we
good
do
story.
need to move on. It is a great story, and I think that just as we progress here and we start to get into the horror aspects, which we can definitely dive into as we get to our later segments a little deeper here. But just from, if we're talking about the synopsis or just, the things that I think really drive the film, we've highlighted a lot of them here. Obviously, you guys are going to want us to talk about Bagul and the horror of that and just how we feel about it. I think that the concept is strong. I think that some of the execution is muddled. I think that there's a lot of great stuff that they do with him, and then there's a lot of stuff that is just that mid 2000s. This is what I expect from a horror movie in 2012 kind of stuff, especially going right to the ending, the jump scare at the end. I know a lot of people have said there's some people in two different camps here where it's like some people are like, oh, it scared the shit out of me. I like it. And then there are people like me who would just think, okay, like that's just completely unnecessary and
Yeah.
does nothing for the movie. And it sucks because I think that he's a good concept. I think like with a little bit more fine tuning, which you would want to do with a sequel, but unfortunately, I hate to spoil it for you guys. The sequel ain't great. Like you watched some of it. Didn't you say when did you watch some of this the other day?
Yeah, just a couple days ago.
Okay, yeah, and I watched it a little while ago. I think was it maybe just after I had said that I was going to do this, and then I watched a few videos on it. But it's just one of those things where it's just like they really just drag the concept through the mud and really keep it on that level of just jump scares and keeping all the basic stuff together, and they don't really get into the true horror of this concept of just having this demon or this entity that lives within these images and attaches itself to these families and makes them do horrible shit. And it's just like and he's abducting these children and he's feeding off of them. Like it's all really well thought out stuff. And I know a lot of people will say the uncredited cameo by Vincent D'Onofrio is just exposition dump, and it kind of is, but I think the character and just the actor himself sell it so well that it doesn't come off that way to me.
No.
I can forgive that.
The Professor Jonas is honestly one of my favorite characters. It's so limited in this. His delivery of everything is phenomenal. He breathes life into that character. That perfect casting for such a small role, because of he makes everything count. Where it's not like you can say it's an exposition dump if you want to, whatever. But it's not like he's standing there just reading lines. He's moving, he's got his assistant, he's drinking coffee, he's into it, it's like he steals the show anytime he's on screen. So it's like the Professor Jonas character, I made a little tweet about it a few days ago saying, how do we go about getting a film with him? Because that character, I think is worth taking a deep dive into. I would love to see a long form. I don't even know if it would be a Bagul story or it would just be something else tackling the occult. I would just love to see that character's day to day because, again, Vincent D'Onofrio just does a wonderful job with that character.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think he's awesome. I'd love to see him come back. I know in the sequel they kind of say that he's missing just kind of hand wave that off. But I think you could retcon a lot of things out of the sequel if you wanted to go for a third entry, but we'll save that. Yeah, I think just going back to Bagul a little bit just before we move on here is that the way to sum it up is that he has a lot of potential as, being one of these icons of horror, and he really could have gotten there. I just think that there's a couple of tweaks that need to be made. But for the most part, I think like all the build up to him and just the process in which you follow to basically obtain or move through this curse is all really well thought out and really beautifully done.
Yeah. And to me, like a lot of stuff that doesn't play well for me are like the ghost children. A lot of that type of horror does not play for me. I think if you would have kept a lot of it to the Super 8 film, it would have been perfect. Like I think Bagul is 10 times more terrifying through the Super 8 footage than he is in the crystal clean digital kind of footage, where it's like, I would have even taken where he's outside in the bushes, that type of stuff, where it's like we don't really get clear shots. He's off in the distance half the time. I think is really what you should have kept it to. And in terms of the ghost children, it doesn't really play for me, especially when they're running around the house. I think I would have kept that less is more in the sense where it's like, I love the scene where Ethan Hawke's going through the house and he checks on his daughter and he thinks she's asleep because she's turned toward the wall. But as he closes the door, it turns out that I think her name's Stephanie is in the corner.
Yep.
I think if you would have just kept like that, instead of having the ghost children running around the house, and you would have just kept that like him thinking that there's something there, but we're not seeing anything and he's not seeing anything, then he checks on his daughter and he closes the door and then that's the unveiling. I think that would have been 10 times better than just kind of having all these kids run around the house. It's him not seeing them. Some of that stuff does not play for me.
Yeah, and there will be some of that with the ghost children. I'm saving for creatures features, just because they do a lot of really cool effects with that. But I agree with you; they don't work for me as well when it comes to that. Like, I think the only scene that really does work for me when it comes to the ghost children is the sequence with Ethan Hawke and the dog.
Yes, I think that's perfect.
Because, like in one perspective, you think it's just an angry dog. But then you see what the dog sees, and he sees the children, and it's like, oh yeah. So I get that. It's a good, effective
silhouettes. I think would have been smart. Just kind of again, less is more.
Yep, absolutely. But I think we can hop off the synopsis here for a little bit. Let's kind of get deep into Sinister here. We're going to start off with a next segment we like to call Behind the Mask, and we'll get into some production history.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horror-thon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
So yeah, we're getting into just the behind the scenes aspects here in this segment. Obviously, we discussed a little bit of them up in the synopsis section and a little bit into our intro.
Are we talking about Halloween 3?
Oh yeah. No, we're just moving completely into Halloween 3. No, not yet. Perfect. Maybe we'll get there. We have a whole month where we're gonna have to talk Halloween. So, but no, we're talking Sinister, and specifically, we're talking about the inception or conception, I should say. We're not going into people's dreams here of Sinister. And I think it's a really interesting story. They just covered it with Scott Derrickson. And
hey, they do have a movie within a movie kind of in this. So
they do. Actually, you're right. So we could go back Inception. Let's get Leo in this bitch. Part 3, Leo and Vincent D'Onofrio. Oh, he is Bagul. That's what it is. Very nice. But no, talking about C. Robert Cargill and Scott Derrickson, where they came up with this, how they got onto it. So if you listen to Postmortem with Mick Garris, well, we checked that out here before as one of our things to study up on when it comes to this movie. They just interviewed about the Black Phone and their work on that, and they do discuss Sinister for a little bit. Specifically, they discuss how it all came along, and I think that the story is really interesting. So if you haven't checked that out, I would highly recommend looking up
Their
Postmortem.
interviews are always great.
Yeah,
Just Derrickson and Carl, they work so well together, and that plays off in all their interviews.
you can really tell that they enjoy working together and that they bounce off each other creatively. But yeah, the concept came from C. Robert Cargill. He had a nightmare one night after watching The Ring, of all things, which videotapes, kind of get that. So he watches The Ring one night, and then he has a nightmare, and it's about him discovering this box of videotapes, his film reels, in his house, in his attic. And then he watches one, and he says, whether this is true or not, it's verbatim the hanging videotape. So it's like that's what he saw in his dream, and that's what's freaked him out. And so I think whether it was a couple months or a few weeks go by, he is in Las Vegas, and he's tweeting about his trip and everything. And Scott Derrickson's in Vegas, so they just say, "Hey, let's meet up. Let's grab a couple drinks." They start pitching each other, and Derrickson pitches a story, and they like it, but then C. Robert Cargill's just like, I got a story for you. Let me pitch you here. And so he pitches him, and it's Sinister. And by the end of the pitch, Scott Derrickson's like, I want to make that fucking movie. And so they literally, I think by the end of the trip, he's called him like 4 or 5 times. Scott Derrickson keeps calling him and texting him saying, hey, when you get home, make sure that you write a treatment so I can get this up to Jason Blum and all this. And I think within a week after he got home, they were sitting in a room with Jason Blum and another producer, and both Jason Blum and this other producer were lobbying for the script.
And I think
And
he didn't
before
even
they
think
knew
he
it, they
was really
sold it.
serious, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he kept going, after like the third call, he goes, oh man, he's really serious. I better write this treatment.
Yeah, and he did, and he wrote that, and then I think they said they wrote it. They wrote the script in like 2 months after that. And then basically from the meeting with Jason Blum, 8 months later, they were on set shooting. So like they swung this thing together fast. And I think one of the things that I liked was Jason Blum said, this is such a great idea that somebody's going to have it in 6 months. So we need to get on this now.
Yeah.
And, that's really, it's awesome to hear him say that. Do I think that Blumhouse produces the kind of horror that I like all the time? No. Do I like what they've done with the Halloween franchise? Not really. But it's one of those things where it's like, I give all the respect in the world to Jason Blum, because when he has an original idea, he is championing it and he will push it, and he stands behind his filmmakers creatively, for better or for worse.
I mean, for better or worse. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. At least they're not afraid to take that shot and give creatives, the chance to tell their stories.
That's why when it comes to horror, you hear Blumhouse and A24 are kind of the big dogs of horror right now, because they don't suffocate their filmmakers and their creatives. They let them run with it, whether it's going to work out or not. And you'll find that where it's now there's just an audience for A24. You just get the production logo in front of a movie, and you're going to have a group of people that are going to go see it just because it's A24. And to some degrees, some of that for Blumhouse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's an interesting story. I think it's a great little origin to this film. It shows that, you can have just this little off-kilter idea and it can grow into a feature film, and it's really inspiring. But I think the reason I bring it up is just to highlight, how well Derrickson and Cargill complement each other. They
it's
just
funny.
work so great.
It's funny how one little idea just kind of multiplies into a giant idea. I just remember we always talk about on the podcast about different things that we've come up with, and I always remember me and you sitting in a room, and I can't remember what exactly we had met up about that day, but I was like, hey, I came up with this opening, and I just want to pitch you on this real quick. And I didn't tell you what it was pertaining to. And then I got through it, and it takes place like in a auto body shop. And as soon as I ended it, you were like, wait, is this about a werewolf? And I said, Why, yes, Dylan. Yes, it is. And it's kind of just, been a thing where there's a lot of stuff written, a lot of content that we've created, and it's just like one little idea. It's like I, as a creative, you have to have this idea in some sort of screenplay, and then it becomes, well, how do I add context so that I can get this idea in here, and then a story starts, characters start, and then by the time you're done, you have, 60-minute TV show or 120-page film. So it's like it's funny how just as a creative you come up with one tiny idea that inspires you, and then you try to make those parameters so that everything else fits in line, and that's very much what this movie was. And it's like, again, we went that initial idea, the opening scene is such a jarring scene, and that led to what, four other jarring Super 8 film footage. So it's like all this stuff just from one little dream into a giant film like this. And now we're talking about, what, I don't know, 10 years later. So it's like, it's funny how all that stuff just happens, just like dominoes.
Oh yeah, and I think that this is definitely it's just lightning in a bottle. I mean, I've been using that term a lot recently, but I think like it is nice to see two creatives get their vision out there, and especially ones that complement each other. I feel like I relate to their story a lot because I feel like you and I do that very much so, which is why we have this podcast, why we stay in tune and in touch with each other creatively, because like, there is often a lot of times where it's like I will have an idea and I'll just pitch you what I have. And it's like, the bones of something. And like I always say, like, you fill in the meat and the skin and everything else. And you're just like, here's the muscle, here it is. Cause like we can do that. And then vice versa. I mean, like we've helped each other, just crack ideas. And it's like, it's gotten to this point where we've just learned each other so well that we could be pitching. And then by the end of the conversation, we don't even need like a couple days or a week or so to think about it. It's just like you'll already be saying stuff and I'll just be writing it down. Like, this is great. Like, this is getting me out of my fucking creative hole that I'm in. And it's awesome to see that working in the Hollywood system.
And I love, I know we're mentioning so many different podcasts on here. It's like going to be overload for people. But, I was listening to the Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith and again for the Black Phone. So I'm assuming their dynamic for screenwriting was pretty much the same back in Sinister time. And I just love their dynamic here because I think they both live in two different states. And Derrickson and Cargill, they write, in their own time. Derrickson talked about like Cargill is very much a night owl, so he'll write at night, and then Derrickson writes during the day. So it's like you have a 24-hour screenwriter on hand, and they each take turns having the master draft. So it's like it's like a relay race. It's passed off continuously. So it's like they just have this dynamic of I'm writing in my own space, and then I'm going to pass it off to you. You come up with your stuff, and then we'll meet and we'll kind of decide on what works, what we need to get rid of, what we need to add. And I just love that dynamic because, I'm sure that kind of dynamic could have existed 30 years ago, but it looked very much different than what it does today. Because right now it's so accessible with so many different programs. I mean, we're podcasting here, you know what I mean? So it's like, just with the technology now, I love that you can see that dynamic and you can see two people excelling in Hollywood, in screenplays, in film, just with that dynamic.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, it is inspiring. It is great to see that. Going into a little bit more of the production history for this film, just because, like, I mean, we're talking about the writers, obviously. That's a huge part of it. But, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the behind-the-scenes stuff. Like, we have Christopher Noor doing the cinematography to this. I think he does a pretty bang-up job. I think that there are certain sections that definitely have that kind of, 2012, 11, 10-ish kind of vibes to it, where it does kind of feel and look like The Possession. It looks like a movie of its time. And I mean, I think you kind of have to do that, but there are definitely, especially when you get to the Super 8 stuff, where you start to see these flares bleed through
Yeah.
of just like where they go with it. And I don't think I didn't even do this research, but I'm gonna check right now if he was the cinematographer for the Black Phone,
And
because I feel like this movie and that movie have a lot of similarities, but
yes,
Black
I
Phone
fully agree.
feels like, to me at least, it feels like that's where they got to kind of take the chains off a little bit,
And
and
that's
they got to really pursue that.
and that's where it's like you're saying,
He's
some of
not.
it plays. What's that?
He's not. They had a different
Oh,
guy
okay.
for the cinematography, but I will say that I give the guy props for being able to push past it where he could, and I think that there's a lot of stuff with the Super 8 stuff. I think most everything that takes place at night is just fantastic.
And as you said, it some of that stuff plays like a product of its time. I feel like that stuff was almost not necessarily like compromised, but had to be added in just because that's what if you want a general audience at that time to come see something, that's what they were accustomed to. Whereas we're in a different spot today with horror, and I think the Black Phone is kind of evident of that because there's some supernatural stuff like that, but it doesn't really play like how Sinister does. I feel like that track record maybe was there a little bit in 2011 or 12. I can't remember when this came out, but
12,
uh,
2012.
12. But not like it was during this whole Black Phone era here. So it's like I feel like today the Black Phone was more indicative of what they really want to do as opposed to how Sinister was because I assume they were a little more prone to certain compromises and had to garner that general audience feel a little bit in 2012 as opposed to today.
Yeah, where they have a little more freedom. They worked on Doctor Strange, so now they can kind of
Do
swing their
whatever they
dicks
want.
around and do what they want. But again, I wanted to kind of just highlight him for a second and give him some props because I think that some of the stuff at night here, a lot of the stuff in the attic, I think was shot wonderfully. Definitely, there's a lot of great camera trickery and movements that feel great. We discussed the oneer for the opening, and those are not easy, but they always add more depth to the film. Um, the other thing that I wanted to highlight here was the music by Christopher Young. The music in this film is very unique. Now, this is a part of the original score. There is another song though that he didn't compose, and this is kind of the bigger musical piece I think that everybody remembers when it comes to it. But it's called Gyroscope by Boards of Canada.
Is
It is that the drums that you hear
okay.
when he's
Yep.
burning the footage, and then in the end credits, that horrifying. That really builds into that, and all the little noises you hear, the little moans and the counting, like that's all in
Yeah.
the song. I actually have that on my Spotify, but I throw it on in the car and just like daydream about other shit that we're hopefully making. And it's just one of those things where it's like it's just such a creepy song. It's just so well. But I think that the score itself complements it very well. It still picks up that same kind of vibe. And I think the use of music is very strong because music is not always present, or it's present very subtly when they're watching these tapes or these
Yeah.
reels. Um, but when it really starts to shine is when I think Ethan Hawke is making his way through the house at night, and you get those really subtle tones. It's a very subtle score, but it's played intentionally. It builds tension extremely well.
Yeah. It adds so much. Like I think it's one of those things where you're not necessarily aware that you're hearing it, but you are, and
Mm,
those are kind of that's the best kind of score in my opinion. Where I know we were talking a few days ago, and you had asked, you said something about is any music play during the Super 8, and I was like, the one kill, the where they're in the garage, where it's a garage fire, and they're listening to. Did you find is that's part of a score, isn't it? Or I don't know if you went back and listened to it.
I did. I think that is a part of the score. I believe it
Okay.
is.
Because that is honestly one of the most unsettling things I've heard, and I think the story of this is great. Honestly, from my recollection, before I went back and rewatched these, the score was something that stuck in my head as like one of the most terrifying things because it comes with the Super 8 footage where it's like thinking back on those, and I always going back to that garage fire scene and that whatever that is, that noise, that score is stuck in my head at that point. It really freaks me out. So I find the score of this entire film unsettling, and like the drums that you were talking about. The most notable piece of this is I think very iconic because it's like you can't think of those scenes in your head without hearing that.
Oh yeah. And then the last couple bits I wanted to discuss here were just that this film did premiere at South by Southwest in March 10th, 2012 is where it got its first introduction to the public, where the hype started to kind of build for this movie. It did pretty well. It got some positive reviews, some praising about the acting, director, some music. Music was a big one for them, and the cinematography. And this did not hit theaters until October 12th, 2012. Or 2012. Why did I say 2012? But yeah, no, it hit theaters then, and it again, I mentioned it off the top, but it had a budget of $3 million, which is crazy. Once you kind of like put that into perspective, just like the level, the quality that we got here. So like, you really gotta pat all the creatives and the people behind the scenes here on the back tenfold for that. And this movie was able to earn in its run $87.7 million.
Wild return.
It's not like, those aren't numbers. Those aren't like Avengers numbers now. But you got to realize that the Avengers have to spend like 11 times that amount to get those movies made. And this movie just did it in 3 million and made 87 million. So Blumhouse was extremely happy with those profits because that's just what they do. They give you $3, $5, $10 million, and then they expect the movie to make just under 100 million by the end of its run. And that's just easy money. So it's just like, that's why them as a studio have been able to stick around and diversify as the years have gone on. And it's a smart business model. Everybody knows the trick now, but it still works in today's standards. But yeah, for 2012, that's a very good return for this movie.
And I mean, thinking back on this film, where it's like, once you have your cast for the majority of this, everyone's coming to the house. And so it's not really a lot of different sets. It's going from room to room in the house. A lot of it's, in
it's kind of all in one spot, really.
Yeah.
So
once you get your actors in there, there really isn't that much to it, which is like props for them for kind of keeping it so contained. I think that's kind of a, not like, it doesn't have that claustrophobic feel of like an Alien or The Shining or anything like that, but you can definitely feel that the containment of, because I think the deputy even mentions, I know he did in the screenplay, I think he did in the actual movie itself, where he says, have you even left this house since you moved in?
Yeah, once he starts asking him about his drinking and everything. Like,
yeah. And that's very much a creative thing where it's like, you can, if you get onto something, you can really just spend so much time, in one spot, developing a story, and not even really think about it. So it's like, to also put in the factor that he's kind of losing himself in these Super 8 footage films, seeing Bagul everywhere, and just being kind of haunted by the supernatural. It's not uncommon for a creative to spend so much time inside of one area, but to add that to it, you can really tell that he is really starting to lose it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Alrighty, well, I think, you bring up the cast and crew, so might as well move on to our next subject here. A little spot we like to call You Are All My Children.
You are all my children now.
Gotta love it. Good old Freddy. But yeah, this is basically our cast and crew segment where we're going to be discussing just all the actors, everybody behind the scenes. If we want to highlight anybody specifically, I know with production we like to highlight a little bit more of the more background guys, but in this one, I really like to say we highlight the actors specifically. And then, of course, writer director. We I think we discuss writer director probably in almost every segment because it is the side of production that we relate so heavily to. But in this instance, I think that I want to discuss just how awesome this cast is and just how everybody, I think, is dialed up to 11 just in the presentation. I mean, we've been, just basically singing Ethan Hawke's praises this entire time. But I mean, he kills it. Like, I mean, he really sells the desperation, the need to want to satisfy that ego and make this book a success. I mean, we discussed it a little bit a couple of topics ago, but I think that like one of the big things that we saw when he's rewatching those interview tapes, like I think that's just such a great scene if you want to pick one out that really sells Ethan Hawke's performance is like you said, the disgust that he has watching himself because he's like, oh, I'm in it for the story, obviously, when literally he just at dinner was telling his wife and kids that like once I sell this book, once I sell this, once I sell that, like he's in it for the money now. And I think
Yeah.
he realizes that. And there are some actors he could throw in that role and I don't think it would sell as well, especially in that scene. But Ethan Hawke brings everything to the table when he does his movies, and like I think this is just one of my after recently watching this, moving up there is one of my favorite performances from him.
And sometimes Ethan Hawke is a notable name for a lot of people, but I feel like a lot of his performances fly under the radar because of kind of the subtleness that he brings to him. I mean, everyone talks
He
about Training Day.
picks his yeah, everybody talks about that, but I think that's intentional because you can see it just in his filmography that he picks very diverse projects. He'll attach himself to something like a Moon Knight from Marvel, but
Yeah.
he really likes to do stuff like First Reformed, which in my opinion is probably his best movie. It's one of my favorites. I love that fucking movie. And then he'll do stuff like Sinister. I mean, and then he'll just do something like The Purge, which is again for Blumhouse, but that's two sides of a spectrum there, where you have The Purge, which is definitely more that popcorn, like we're bringing people into this, just to see the violence, have some fun kind of horror, as
Yeah.
to where this is more that cerebral character study kind of horror.
And he doesn't play that many things over the top. I'll say like with the Black Phone, I feel like that is for me probably such a big performance for him because of the range that he shows. And that's not a knock on him at all. I love Ethan Hawke. I think like um in Sinister here where he doesn't necessarily, I mean, there are moments where he's got that emotion, but he doesn't play anything too over the top, and it's so believable. I think that art is in the subtleness of his performances. So when he does use that emotion, it counts so much more. So it's like with this one, he goes through so many, like he's a family man, and then one minute he's a family man talking to his daughter, next minute he's so smug to the sheriff as a creative writer, where it's like, oh, I'm not a fan, or I left I have an extra copy of Kentucky Blood up in my office, I can go get it for you. So it's like he can turn on a dime so quick, and I think that's the art of this performance in Sinister, where he breathes life into the Ellison Oswald character. He makes you believe everything that he's saying, and I think that's uh, again, he feels like an author, I think, with just the way he carries himself here. So it's like so believable. So it's like I know you had made a post on our Twitter account, and you were saying you said needed some inspiration for writers. He is absolutely one of my favorite portrayals as a writer because I feel like this is to a T.
Oh yeah. Um, Other actors I want to highlight here. We didn't talk much about her. I mean, we brought her up a little bit, but Juliette Rylance, I think, does a fantastic job playing off of Ethan Hawke. I think that they have really good chemistry, and they just work really well. The scene that I highlight is their big argument, where it finally comes out that they're living in the murder house. Beautiful scene. I think it's probably one of my favorites in this movie. Like, I have a few favorite scenes, but like, if I had to say, that might be top two, just because the drama that you sense there, you really buy it when they're going back and forth with each other. And you can just see how tired she is of this and how serious she is about like taking the kids and leaving. But you can also see the desperation and understand both sides. Like, Ellison's in the wrong, like fully here. Like, he should have been upfront about everything. But at the same time, you do understand where he's coming from. And I think that's a beautiful part of that performance. But it would be nothing if his partner, his wife, couldn't sell that back to you. Just the desperation and everything that her family's been put through. And I think she does a bang up job. I think that she gets a few moments to shine in here, and she takes them and runs with them.
And like that kind of build up and tension, of tension that they have here, where you're talking, obviously the big blow up fight scene is honestly the probably the most memorable of her performance throughout the film. But like the build up of tension, where she says, play nice, and then we have where she's laying in bed and he's gonna go work in his office, and she says, what if you can't get the fame that you had with Kentucky Blood? And there's kind of just this kind of subtle annoyance in her performance that plays so well, that makes that build up to that fight closer toward the end there so much more meaningful, because finally, like, it's kind of like she's going to this point and going to this point, and then finally we hit it and she's going above when she can actually take out her aggression on Ellison, and how fed up she is with his uh, pursue of this case, and actually moving his family into this house. So I think if she wasn't as good as she is, it wouldn't have played, and that's why it's like where this story works so well for me is. The horror is fine, but the dynamic between these two is absolutely so believable, and these two actors have such chemistry here that I just love being with this family.
Absolutely, I agree. Kind of just so we can keep moving through things, I'd love to talk about her performance more, but I do want to highlight again, Fred Thompson plays the sheriff. I mean,
He's great.
his couple scenes are standout for sure. That opening sequence where they discuss the cases and that he doesn't like Ellison, but I want to touch more when Ellison is packing up and they're getting out of town. Really, I think, encapsulates his entire character, and just like what his goal was and motivation, and having that validated for him, and just seeing how he chooses to play that moment, where he's not sitting there, being like, oh, I told you so. I think it's a really restrained kind of victory for him, where he's just more, I'm glad he came to your senses, and move along. Just do me a favor, don't keep it what does he say? Keep it below 60 until you're out of my county.
Yeah,
Kind
then
of
you're
deal.
someone else's problem.
Yeah, and it's like, it's harsh, but I think that he's finally, he's staying that way. He's staying more firm than he is trying to be a dick about it. You know what I mean? Because he's just trying to basically say, I'm glad you saw the error of your ways. Now get the fuck out of here before you change your mind.
Well, and the thing is yeah, he's annoyed with Ellison, but I don't think he's got necessary. He wouldn't have a vendetta against Ellison other than he moved in the town. The motivation for the sheriff character has always been the town's best interest. He didn't want him there because of what it could do to the
Because
town.
he says that they need to heal and
Yes.
everything. Like, that's his big point.
So, and he sells that so well, where it's like, I don't have a hatred for Ellison. I just want you out because I don't want this. What I can't remember how he phrases it, the sideshow or something that you bring with you. He doesn't want it there. So he's always acted in the best interest of the town. He's not swayed by the fame like the deputy is. So it's like he keeps that through and through. And for it to be Fred Thompson, I think, yeah, minimal, but he plays his role so well. Where he was also in Roseanne, just for a couple episodes. But he's one of those guys that you could look at and be like, oh yeah, he should be a sheriff in something. You know what I mean? Where it's like perfect casting because he's kind of got that uh very serious, you don't want to mess with him kind of tone.
Yeah, and they really wanted him for this role. Apparently, Derrickson and Cargill, they had him in mind when they wrote it. From what I understand, listening to some of these interviews with them, so like he was definitely on their list of people they needed to make this movie, and I could see why because he does a great job. And then that brings us to our last guy on the cast here that I think we can highlight and have a lot to say about it. But James Ranson, we've kind of talked a little bit about him here. On and off as we've been going through the podcast, but I really think that he adds a certain level of charm to this film and humor, which is something that, we had discussed a little bit about, what's the difference between having humor in a horror film and a horror comedy, as to where this is the perfect example of interjecting a little bit of humor without deflating any of your concept, because like I think that he walks that line very tightly in a sense of just like he could step over it and be a complete schmuck and just like really deflate a lot of this, but he doesn't. Even do his little lines like when Ellison falls out of his attic and he's talking to James Ranson and he's just like, I heard somebody up there, I heard somebody walking around, and he's just like, oh man, like it could have been an animal, it could have been this, and he's like, well, I mean, we've had bugs and there was a snake up there, and he's like, snakes don't have feet, so it couldn't have been him. It's just like that line is so throwaway and so quick, but it's hilarious because it's like you could tell that he's not making fun of him, it's genuinely a thought that came across his mind because he's just so enamored, and he's such a, and I love that he's a fan of Ellison's. I think that it's great. He even comes in when he says that he wants to be a part of the case by saying, I want to be that guy that you shout out in your book as Deputy so and so. And that's what they call him in this movie, is Deputy so and so. He's not given any other name than that.
Yeah, and I like him because like you're saying, he's not that kind of bumbling idiot Barney Fife, you know what I mean, kind of character. They don't play him like that. Yeah, he totes that line a little bit. But like when you're talking about the attic scene, it's kind of his deducive nature where it's more so it's his thought. He's an investigator. I mean, like they give him some teeth to his character where he says, "Was he got a criminology degree?" I can't remember exactly what it was. But so it's like they're proving that he's not some sort of idiot. Like never been out of town, doesn't really understand the psychology of anything. It's like he's an investigator, so it's like, oh no, snakes don't have feet, you know what I mean, where it sounds stupid but he's really just kind of deducing what exactly it could be or could not be. And it plays for comedy, and I think that's very funny. I think it takes a talent for an actor and a writer to kind of not go over that line and sell it perfectly, which I think he does. So it's like they have these elements that he's funny, but then as soon as he calls Ellison, there's a few times there where it's like, yeah, I found this. I know a string of tied in crimes when I see it. So it's like he is a good investigator. He's just, I guess, a little too new in a sense and hasn't really had a chance to kind of, he's not Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt in Seven. He lives in a smaller town, so it's like he doesn't deal with a lot of different things on a daily basis, but he's hungry and eager to. So it's like, and he's got that talent. So everything that Ellison gives him, he produces results. So it's like you can tell he's a good police officer. He just hasn't had that that experience. And I think James Ranson, he plays it so well, where it's like 1 minute he can kind of be like this very innocent, you feel sorry for him, and the next minute you feel like, oh man, this guy really does know what he's doing. So perfect casting.
Yeah, no, through and through, I think the cast is excellent.
And then Vincent D'Onofrio, I want to bring
Yes,
it up one more time. He's perfect.
yes, he was going to be one of my last points here because I did forget to mention him. He is uncredited in the film. He is a friend of Ethan Hawke's that he was able to convince him to come on and play this small part, literally from his house on Skype. But yes, he does an excellent job playing this character. He brings a lot of gravitas to the film, and really, I think, rounds off this triangle of investigation between their expert, the deputy, and the writer. You know what I mean? Like it's a really strong element, and I think they all play off each other so well. And I know you had tweeted on Twitter that you wanted to see his own little continuation or standalone film, and I think that that's brilliant. And if they ever did a Sinister 3, I think going back to him would really kind of, because in a way I don't necessarily love where Sinister 2 goes, but it's James Ranson's movie, it's Deputy so and so's movie in a way. So like kind of tapering off this trilogy and having it follow Vincent D'Onofrio's character could be a really solid way to end this.
And my motivation for that tweet was to get Vincent D'Onofrio to like it. He did not. So the quest continues. On next up I will be posting a screen cap of him in Adventures in Babysitting.
There you go. Very nice, very nice. And then you can go to Law and Order, and just keep going. Like you get a lot of content out of him. But for the sake of time, I do want to move on here. That is our segment talking about just the cast and the crew and everybody there. So some good highlights. Like I said, fantastic cast. But I think it's time that we take a brief stop into our next segment, which we call Creatures Features.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Love that scene every time.
Classic.
But yeah, Creatures Features, this is where we talk about the effects. Normally, because we've been talking about some older films, I think up to this point, Slither would have been the next
most
newest,
modern one.
Most modern, or when did Slither come out?
2006.
Okay, so then Slither and Abominable tied then, because
okay, well, and we also did a horror in review. Remember when we started the
That's
podcast?
true.
I forgot about that.
That's kind of okay. Those episodes I don't count because we're just talking about a bunch of stuff. Kind of like I wouldn't count Swearwolves Not Werewolves. Yeah, Werewolves Not Swearwolves. In my book, I don't know how you do it, but like for me personally, when we do a deep dive,
it's a mashup.
That's when it counts. Yeah, the mashup. It's
I'll
kind of
subscribe
like
to your method.
I like it. It's just an orgy.
It's not
of
long
content,
form. It's just kind of like it's brief blurps. I get it.
Yep. So with this, I'd say with us getting more modern, you do tend to step away from a lot of practical effects. And this movie, for some credit, did try to shoot most of everything they do in camera. Which I want to highlight a couple things. Firstly, being the Super 8 film, all the stuff that they shot there, all the takes. I'm going to pose this question here and now because I've just kind of been freeballing it here, trying to figure out a good spot where I could put this. If you had to pick any of the tapes, which you'd say were your quote favorite, which one would you go with?
Okay, so we have the throat slitting one. We have the I already know. It's the lawnmower.
The lawnmower? Yeah, yes. See, everybody really goes for the lawnmower because it is such a great, shocking scene. Yeah. And just the fact that you don't see the aftermath, you just see the lead up and then it hits. It's great. I'm gonna say the tree hanging, just because it is that first one that really sucks you
Yeah,
in and just gets you there, and it just unsettles me to watch their legs dangle and kick until they stop. It's
yeah.
just so brutal. And
And
there's great, but the lawnmower is definitely the closest second, if not first. It could be a toss up.
and the lawnmower with that kind of like little jump scare there it's a face, isn't it, that they're gonna be running over?
Yes, it's the mother.
Okay, and in the screenplay, because I did read the screenplay, it's played a little bit differently. Is where I think it's maybe the father is watching the lawnmower come closer and closer to his legs. So that must have been an editing choice, later on in those into filming to just make it like a real in your uh face kind of, with the lawnmower. So, and I think that was a smart play because that's one of the things that gets me every time. Even though I know it's coming, it still gets me.
Absolutely.
And then
Um,
one of the ones that I did like again, there was another kill in another tape in the original screenplay, which was moved to Sinister 2, which it plays very brutally. Even in Sinister 2, I think that's probably my favorite one in there is the uh the snow one where they're buried in the snow and they're frostbitten. Um, I honestly, if that one was moved to the original Sinister, I think that would have been my favorite because it's just so brutal.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a cool one. When you had mentioned that when we were talking off air about that, how they originally were going to put that in there, that was kind of a neat one for me there. Um, so with that in mind, I think that all of the Super 8 films, like, there's a lot of really great practical effects. They try to do every as much as they can in camera, even to the extent that the pool sequence, which is a pretty elaborate sequence in and of itself, I'd say like they're mostly all pretty simple, I would say, because I mean, one, they're just laying in bed and everybody's asleep and they're getting their throat slashed. The other, the people are in the car and you just see it from that outside perspective. The tree hanging, I could see that being complex. And then the lawnmower, you don't see anything until you see that face right before it hits. But this one, you've got all this whole family. They're all tied to these lounge chairs, these tanning, like, these, what are they, beach chairs, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're just getting pulled one by one into this pool and they're drowning. um would you believe me if I said that that was all shot in camera and they actually had people tied to those chairs and they pulled them into the pool, and they literally had them do that, and they would have divers at the bottom of the pool with air to give that to them? Did you know
See,
that?
I think maybe briefly in the research, I just remember the Bagul thing where I think they had him in weighted
Yep,
things.
I was gonna bring that up next because I was
Okay,
gonna say, if you didn't,
sorry, I didn't mean
if
to step on your toes.
you're good, because if that didn't blow your mind, that certainly will.
And that's where it's like, it's hard to believe. I didn't know all that because I think in what I had read was a very brief description in terms of them pulling the chairs in. But it's like to think that they went to that extent for what are those like? What do they play for like 15 seconds or something?
Mhm.
I can't imagine how long that took to film. But it's like the quality that they wanted for those Super 8 footage films. I mean, and it's there. Those are some of the most memorable things in this in the entire film, and even though that are only played for a little bit. And one of the things I did want to bring up real quick that I forgot to mention earlier was I love some of the stuff we don't even actually see. We just see reflection in Ethan Hawke's
Ethan Hawke's
glasses. That's why.
glasses. Yeah, no, I was gonna bring that up too. I think like it really adds to the element of being able to show a little more, but still being restrained enough to not be so over the top with it.
And it makes you pay attention as a viewer, because it's like you're hungry to see what exactly is going on. And as soon as they cut away, I find myself looking into his glasses just to be able to see that reflection.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, the last couple bits that I wanted to discuss here in this section as far as effects, because we kind of highlighted the 8 millimeter films and everything, is just Bagul himself. It's just like it's a unique take. It's an interesting look. We have him up in the corner as our GIF for this episode. You don't see that much of him. I think that, you know, it's cool. I think it's a neat look. Is it the scariest thing in the world? No. I like how they use him in the film. I think that's more scary than anything. Um, but I could easily see him getting tiresome the more you see him and not really being as threatening. And I feel like with the little bit that I know and have seen from the sequel, you get a lot of that. You see a lot of him in that movie.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
too much.
does kind of really start to really take away from the creep factor.
Yeah, and that's where it's like with this. I think keeping him in the Super 8 footage would have just been so well done because the Super 8 footage itself adds so much personality. It feels so different, almost like it is. Some of those are completely different time period. So to kind of make him this everlasting figure through so many different time periods through the footage, I think would have been a great play on that. So it's like the less we see him kind of perfect in, that Ellison Oswalt kind of world, I think the better. So it's like, I think there are even a few times in the actual film itself where we could have been spared seeing him and then just keeping him strictly in the footage to where he exists. I think that would have been smart. And I think that's where Sinister 2 really, I mean, there's a lot of hiccups in Sinister 2, but like showing him so much without not necessarily being in the actual footage itself, I think is such a big misstep. Where it's like here they really toed that line. In most cases, there's some points where I'm like, I don't think we really needed that, and just kept them in the footage. But overall, I mean, I don't think it's a bad look. I don't think it's the scariest thing in the world. But keeping him in that footage, I think would have added just so much to him.
Oh yeah. Because really, I only think that it starts to take away from it in this film is when he carries off Ashley at the end
Yeah,
and the jump scare.
yeah,
But we'll get into our ending here in the next segment. I really think that's about it for me as effects. We did discuss the ghost children a little bit. I'd say the one thing that I really appreciated is that they shot them with a different frame rate than they did the other, the rest of the film.
yeah.
So they were able to overlay them to give them that kind of quick, creepy, creaky looking vibe to them, which I thought was neat. But again, the ghost children don't always work for me.
And the makeup there, the makeup effects, is that practical or?
It is, yeah. A good bit of it is still practical.
Because I don't know, for me, it does not look good.
I think that the children have a hard time of selling it. I think that
Yeah,
it does look like in some aspects, I hate to say it, glorified Halloween makeup
yeah.
with a couple of them. But I mean, like at the end of the day, it's a $3 million budget. They kind of do it somewhere. I think it's one of the only elements of the film that I think that just doesn't work for me. We've made it pretty clear as just how they use the children. I think like the concept is great of him taking the children and turning the children on and killing their families, but like just having them stalk him and stuff, like it's rough. You know where I think the best use of the children is when he's rewatching that footage of him falling out of the attic and you see the hands.
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. If we would have
I
just
think
kept it
that's
at
great.
that, oh, so scary, so
It's
creepy.
where, and like when he's playing that footage back and he sees something and doesn't know what it is, and then he kind of goes back. I get chills when he stops and he sees the kid's hands. It's so creepy to me. I think that's a perfect play. It's like again, less is more with that. So it's like
Yeah,
I think that's the route they should have went. I don't want clear shots.
absolutely. But yeah, I mean, short segment for this one. Unfortunately, with these kind of more modern films, depending on what you're watching, it tends to lean a little heavier into the CG. This film, not so much, like we had said, but it's a little tougher to go as deep when we're like compared to something like a From Beyond or an Abominable, where there's just so much that goes into those effects there.
This
But
is so story based, with
yeah, so
elements of the supernatural. So it's like there isn't that much to go with.
it's more about the tones and just how you can, present horror that you don't see so
Yep.
clearly. And that's a beauty of it. And I think this film executes that beautifully, but the effects, when they are there, they do play very well. So I think I'll take us into our last segment here called The Check is in the Mail.
Just listen to the old Pork Chop Express and take his advice on a dark and stormy night, all right? When some wild-eyed 8-foot-tall maniac grabs your neck, taps the back of your favorite head up against a barroom wall, and he looks you crooked in the eye, and he asks you if you've paid your dues, Well, you just stare that big sucker right back in the eye, and you remember what old Jack Burton always says at a time like that. Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir, the check is in the mail.
Love that clip. Can't get enough Jack Burton in my life, honestly.
Kurt Russell, I love him.
We got to reference him every time. He's in our intro, he's in our outro, and he's even in the show. If we could get him as a guest one day, like, holy shit.
I'm sure we will.
I would love
that. We're going to start a campaign.
Absolutely. If any of you guys got any connections with Kurt Russell, want to get him on our
send
podcast,
him our way.
Please send him our way. I know we're getting a little big-headed. We're killing it out here. So
hey, wouldn't that be great if we have like 100
views.
views and then we just randomly have Kurt Russell on the podcast?
That'd be hilarious. I'd love that. That'd be so great. But yeah, this is our legacy and wrap-up section. We're just kind of giving our final thoughts on the film. I think we've danced around it quite a bit, but I would like to get into one of my main criticisms of the movie is just that I feel like, this is not a point of contention, but a point of contention for us both with the film, not between each other, of just how this movie, to me, is firing on all cylinders. It's running. It's good. I like it. Ghost children aside, I can forgive that. Where it starts to fall apart is just after they move back to their old house.
Yeah.
And I feel like the movie just kind of wraps up so quickly. I like the reveal. I like the twist. I think that's all works. That's all consistent with the story. I just think that the fact that he gets drugged and by his daughter and then chopped up and then she walks away with Bagul in the end, it just feels so anticlimactic.
Yeah.
And I have to be a little bit harsh on the film for that. I think we've sung this movie's praises pretty thoroughly, so I think I can get away with saying it, but I think that this is the part of the movie where I just feel like they got to the end of the script and they had to write something. And they just kind of, it doesn't feel as nearly well developed or as much care as there was in every other element of this movie. It just kind of falls flat.
And I definitely get that feeling as well, where as soon as we get back to the house, he's finally answers the deputy's call. We get all that information. Then he hops on his little Skype chat with Professor Jonas. We get that information. And then he's back getting the extended cuts of the home movies, and he's threading those together, and he's watching that, and then he's getting drugged, and then we're done. Then he's getting his head chopped off. Then we get our ending here. It all happens so quick. And me and you had talked a couple days ago where, again, I've read the screenplay. And I honestly, I feel like on paper, the ending reads way better than on film. And, we get that with some of the Stephen King properties and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, well, reading it in my head, I had a different picture. And I think, in my head, it was a little bit scarier, a little more paced. Whereas, this is exactly how I feel, where it seems a little more terrifying on paper, as then once you translate it to film and you get that singular vision, and it's like, oh, okay, so this isn't what I had in my head, but this is what we're getting now, and this is what it becomes because now I've seen it and I have a visual. I think that might be the problem here. It really does feel like that scenario of, hey, we're going a bit long. Let's wrap this up and move on to the next thing. So it's like, it doesn't feel as paced. It just feels like, hey, we need to put a bow on this and get on to our next project. So, it feels very abrupt, and to have so many different kills, in that Super 8 footage, for this to kind of just be, I'm going to chop off your head. And then I think she does a drawing of, basically, I think she chopped them on their neck and then on their waist. So they were in 3 pieces. That's what it looks like from the little drawing that she does. But again, we don't even see that. So it's like this cutaway, we don't really see too much. And it just seems like, honestly, probably the lamest kill out of all the Super 8 footage. And it's like, you really have to have that exclamation point to put on this film. And it just feels like a period.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely the weakest as far as any of them go. I think it's just not nearly as creative or well thought out. And, you know, for him being our main character that we're following, we get to know so much about. You really think that they could come up with something a little deeper and a little more satisfying as far as resolution there. But I mean, really, that's probably the biggest red mark I can give the movie. I mean, other than that, it is a really great, uh, you know, horror thriller with a lot of fantastic acting, wonderful representation of the character type and the arc and everything. I think that if they would have stuck the landing, this could have gone down as a damn near classic horror
Yeah.
flick. But I think the ending and then that tacked on jump scare at the end where Bagul shoots out just really screams, you know, early 2010s horror movie
I feel
to
like
me.
that jump scare was their kind of run for an exclamation point. They're like, we need something to put on the end of this. And I
They
don't think
had to
it.
do it. They had to fix something, and they
Yep,
just.
and it just didn't work.
Mhm.
So it's like, it kind of it doesn't end with a bang at all. It kind of just flutters out a little bit, I feel. Um, I wish we had a better, last 10 minutes. And what is this runtime? Is it an hour 45? Something like that?
This is. I'll get to you on that, but
Okay, because I
it's
didn't think it was
not
like
very long.
I didn't think it hit the 2 hour mark.
No.
So it's like I think we would have benefited honestly for like another 10 minutes, just to kind of pace it out a little bit and kind of build up to that ending, and then to actually show some sort of ending kill.
It's actually close. It's an hour 50. It doesn't feel like that though.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, and again, I think an extra 10 minutes in film is forever. You can get through so much in another 10 minutes of this that I think it would really have benefited from that and probably made the ending a little more impactful.
Mhm.
Um, but I I have my problems with the end, but overall the film is still pretty enjoyable throughout
Oh
the
yeah.
storytelling of it.
I think this was a pretty strong revisit. I mean, like we obviously had a lot to say here. We've talked for almost 2 hours about Sinister.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Who would
like
have
we
thought?
obviously had a good bit of fun coming back to this. I think like for me, um, you know, it's kind of my closing statement here, is just that, you know, it always pays to go back and give something another chance. Cause, you know, for a long time, this movie was just in its box of something that I watched and it didn't impress me. And, you know, like I just never had the intention of going back to it. But, you know, the filmmaker has another movie coming out. I like to go back, especially when I'm anticipating it, like I was for the Black Phone. Um, you know, I go back and I look at their work, and this surprised me with just how much I actually pulled out of it. You know, for feeling like I didn't get much the first time, I think, and you know, I guess you got to look at the age difference here too. In 2012, I was, oh God, I was 14. So like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like I watched that then, and then you know, I watch it now as an adult, and it's just like I can relate so much more to some of this, the struggles, and you know, I can really actually see where the intentions were and just how much care was put into it. And you know, I will definitely say that I recommend Sinister. I do. I think that it's definitely worth watching. The ending is a bit of a disappointment, and the final jump scare just feels like just egregious to me, and just kind of like, why would you end your movie like that? Personally, like it just feels gimmicky. And yeah, I don't think that the ghost children really work for me in the way that they're used all the time. But really, in the grand scheme of things, there is still so much to really take from this movie, and so much that I enjoy, and so much that I'm excited to go back and watch again in a couple of years and just, you know, see if I can pull anything more out of it. And I got to say, the performances, the human drama, and those Super 8 movies, man, they really are some of the biggest highlights of this movie.
Yeah. And again, my notion before we went back and revisited this was that it is one of those films that kind of makes me uneasy. And, I always go back to that Super 8 footage, where that still holds up perfectly. It's a different aesthetic. It's something so memorable. It's unique to this film. but then going in and really deep diving into these characters where I think maybe a lot of people forget initially about. So it's like it really gives you a lot to revisit with this film, just from a story perspective. So it is a lot of, I mean, I don't want to say fun, but it's I think it's a more terrifying watch than a lot of other things that are out there. And there's a lot of great filmmaking and storytelling in this, so it's definitely it has a high rewatch value. I think again the little bit the ending there doesn't really necessarily land, but I'm not gonna disregard the entire film because overall I think it's a great film. So
Absolutely.
definitely worth rewatching. And just to in terms of legacy, eh, we both watched Sinister 2. I think Sinister 2 had some like from a bullet points perspective, I think could have started out decently and then kind of just when he started adding in the layers, they put in the wrong layers. So it's like I would love to see this universe revisited in some fashion.
I agree.
It's like, James Ranson's character, I don't know what kind of end he meets necessarily in Sinister 2. So it's like I don't know if they could bring him back. Professor Jonas, like I said, I think that would have been your money. Would have been Professor Jonas and James Ranson together, dealing with the aftermath of what happened with the Oswalts and both of them kind of believing in Bagul. But we didn't get that. But I would love to see Scott Derrickson and see Robert Cargill kind of tackle another go of it in the Sinister universe.
100%. I think that it's a ripe series. It's a good idea. There's a little bit of fine tuning that needs to be done for Bagul's character, like I said earlier. But I mean, the concept is there, and it works. And I'd really think that if the offer ever came across to us in some form of way to play in this universe, I would like to give it a shot. I'd like to give it a shot and see what I could come up with. Don't know if it'd be any good. Could be complete garbage, could be worse than Sinister 2. But I think that the idea itself, there's enough to chew on there that I would just love to just see what I could bring to the table.
I would totally switch it, and somehow it would be like the death of Ellison Oswalt, and it would be totally out of character, other than like he's dead, right? And he's just trying to still come up with his next novel. It has nothing to do with Bagul or anything like that. It's just a zombified Ellison Oswalt trying to come up with his next hit.
I love it. I think that'll be good. But yeah, guys, that about wraps us up here for Sinister. So definitely, I didn't expect this one. If you had asked me when we started this back in March, said that Sinister would be one of the earlier shows when we come back to this, I would have said that's bullshit. But hey, sometimes I surprise myself. But yeah, I mean, if you guys are interested in following us, you like the content, you had a good time with the episode, please subscribe. We're always posting stuff here. We're getting real consistent. We're doing our best to keep you guys entertained, keep you informed with our Sunday scaries that Luke runs and heads up there, as well as little shorts and clips and reviews here and there of just new releases. And we got a lot more planned coming down the pipeline. But if you think we deserve it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button or go ahead and follow us, like us, even leave us a review on any of our other platforms. We're on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, as well as our main form of social media being Twitter. You can see right there at the bottom is our handle at SplatterCast Pod. We are both on there pretty consistently. Luke is always getting some good conversation starters going, rubbing shoulders with people like Scott Derrickson and see Robert Cargill. Pretty cool stuff right there, my man. Very, very fun to see. They really like your coverage of the Black Phone, it seems.
Apparently, I'm a
But
popular guy.
oh yeah, but if you want to keep up with us, that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, go ahead and throw a comment down there. Let us know what you guys think of Sinister. Have you seen it in a while? Is it something that maybe you also overlooked and maybe you'll give it another shot? Or is this a
Time to
movie that you've
revisit.
loved since the moment you saw it? And maybe we're just crazy and now we're happy to be on that side of the fence,
We're just a bunch of losers with microphones.
That's
We don't know
true.
what we're talking about.
Who the heck knows? But yeah, I guess that about wraps us up. Luke,
And
you
we have
got
our own
anything
mug.
for the what's up?
I said, and we have our own mugs.
We do have our own mugs, our own merchandise. God, we're so self-centered, but I'd say that about wraps us up. Until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, wait, what's our outro?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
That's the one right there. Anyway, guys, take it easy.